I can't do this just yet. Let's see who gets through this. Keep them back.
Finally here. Mortal flesh is so fallible. Rise and fight. Another challenger. Life is so brutal. Give yourself the void. Mortal flesh is so valuable. Shadow, rise and fight. You do not die. Mortal flesh is so valuable. Give yourself the void. Until next time.
After school here, so I wanted to tell you about my cold cast when stun Gladiator. I've been working on this build for a little while now, and I'm super happy with it. As far as the builds that I create, it's definitely one of my best. I'll show you what it looks like, but I'll talk a little bit about the ideas for this, what I was hoping to do, and how it turned out. So just to make note, I didn't follow any build guide except for my prior knowledge of cast when stun for this, so there might be some ways to improve this or mistakes that I've made. It's entirely possible, so maybe you have some ideas for it, or you will notice some things that aren't as optimal as they could be. It works pretty well as is, so it's good the way it is. It could be better, I'm certain, in some way, but I don't know how. Anyways, the basic idea is a Falling Crystals autobomber. We have a Graft which has a skill called Falling Crystals. Falling Crystals will fire an ice shard at anything that you chill, basically. It happens automatically, and it does quite a bit of damage, so it is sort of a viable core skill for this autobomber. And you might think that Occultist would be sort of the obvious choice for this, since you get the minus cold resist on the ascendancy tree. But I started working on that, but I wasn't happy with the tankiness. You can go CI, I guess. You could get block. You've got a fairly good node in the ascendancy tree for defensiveness, but it just wasn't feeling great, and I didn't know how to make it into what I wanted. So I decided to just go for it and try it out as Gladiator. We got the lucky block. You can add in the cast when stun, which makes it for a super tanky character. You don't need to do as much to support falling crystals as you do for a lot of other damaging skills. So it seemed like it might be able to work. I was also hoping to improve upon the fire-based cast when stun build's visual clarity, which I always find to be a little annoying. And so I wanted it to be a little cleaner looking in the gameplay, and I think mine is, although it's not that much different. If you've got 100 mobs around you, they all have 3 curses on them. Yeah, you don't have, and you got explodes, you don't have a lot of visual clarity, so it's kind of a hopeless attempt, but I think it is a little bit better in some situations. I also, with cast when stun, bossing can be extremely frustrating. Your damage is dependent on you being hit, and the bosses, if they're not hitting you very often, your damage is not very good, and that can be a little bit annoying. You can generally kill things because you're essentially immortal, so eventually you'll wear it down, but how long will it take? It could take a very long time. So since the falling crystals fire automatically as long as you're chilling, you have a bit more automation in terms of your full-time uptime on your damage, and this does actually achieve that pretty well. So the basic concept here: cast when stunned. It's giving us the tankiness where not only hit immune, but hits actually heal us, which is nice. Or max block, and we have lucky block with Gladiator, so it's very good defensively. We have maximum resistances, 90 all res, or 90 maximum resists across the board. And we're also chilling mostly for 30% effect, sometimes a little bit less. So between 20 and 30 consistently everywhere, and 30% frequently. So that's a nice additional defensive aspect to it. There's some gear choices you can make to make it even more tanky, but as is, it's pretty good. Alright, we'll take a look at our skill gems and links. I'll start off here in the configuration for Path of Building. So since we're looking at some damage numbers, you can see how I've configured it to arrive at the numbers that I have here. So I'm estimating I've been standing around for 5 seconds because we stand around quite a bit with this build. That seems fairly realistic in a lot of situations. We're on low life. We use frenzy charges. We use endurance charges. We've been hit recently. Even if you block, you're still considered to be hit. So we've been hit, and we've blocked recently for sure. We're in sand stance. Again, standing around for 5 seconds. Enemies definitely chilled. And again, saying we've been staying around for 5 seconds. We're always chilling, so they're always going to be chilled for the same amount of time that we've been nearby. And I'm estimating the amount of chill at 25%. It's consistently between 20 and 30, and frequently 30%. So 25 seems safe, and I don't know if that even factors into the damage calculation here. I have an unnerved on hit for bosses, so seems fair to check this. Adds a little bit of damage. And we've got Guardian Pinnacle Boss selected. And checked Ubers because I haven't really even tried this build against Ubers. And that's what my configuration looks like. So headed over to skills, In my helmet, I've got Cold Snap linked to Cast When Stunned. I'm not even going to mention that going further because all my skills will be linked to Cast When Stunned. Bone Chill, and Unbound Ailments. And so the goal of Cold Snap here in the build is to create chill to ground, and then to boost that chill with our supports. So we're getting a good chill effect on the mobs. And then if they get killed on this chilling ground that Cold Snap creates, then we get frenzy charges. So this is a very reliable way of getting frenzy charges, since this is always going off and mobs are always standing on it. This works out really well. Alright, got Flesh and Stone. That is going to be in our shield. It needs to be in our shield because our shield has reservation efficiency on it. The only way to fit it into the reserved portion of life that Petrified Blood reserves is to make sure you have enough reservation efficiency. So you need that 30% increased reservation efficiency on the shield. Same thing with Petrified Blood, that's going to be in our shield. Tempest Shield, same thing. That's giving us a bunch of spell block. It also potentially shocks monsters that are blocking that we block. I don't know how much that really contributes to the damage of the build, but that is something. Got Righteous Fire activated, and usually just regular Righteous Fire, so we'll adjust that. This gives us some spell damage, and just a little some incremental damage here. Probably not too much. Yeah, 27k is it's something, but it's not very much. In our boots, we've got Frostbomb linked to Culling Strike. Frostbomb is nice because it's applying minus 15% to cold resistances. It's also limiting life regen, and since it's linked to Culling Strike, it'll take out the monster once it hits 10% life. So this works pretty effectively. In the body armor, we have Ice Spear Splitting. I tried regular Ice Spear, which I figured would be better for damage, but it just didn't seem to really work out that way in the game. Maybe I didn't know the right supports to include with it, but Ice Spear Splitting works pretty effectively, and it looks pretty cool. So I'm pretty happy with this skill. I've got Awakened Elemental Focus, Awakened Controlled Destruction, since our critical strikes is pretty limited. Hypothermia, since everything's chilled. And I believe this works even though another skill is probably causing the chill. Path of Building seems to think that this works, so I go with it. And then Awakened added cold damage. You can also potentially play with returning projectiles, which might actually be better for boss situations, but it was a little hard to tell, and it just didn't seem to work very well when I tried it out. It could be just my limitations in terms of experience with this type of a skill, but it just didn't seem to add much. Got Zealotry here. This is about the best aura that I could find. It doesn't really add that much damage, but it's not nothing. So we're going from, so it's definitely an increase of damage here, but it's not very strong. None of the other auras were really that useful. I did run Purity of Fire for a little while so that I could cap my fire resist and didn't have the points on the tree to do it. That seems like a very reasonable compromise to make if you are lower level and you don't have enough points to max your fire resist on the tree itself. It's linked to Eternal Blessing, so it's basically a free aura with the limitation, well, you can't use any other auras. We're reserved against mana anyways. So our other skills are reserved against life, So this is just a way of getting an additional aura into the build. Got Frostblink for movement, which is just my preference. You could use any movement skill that you feel comfortable with. And this is sort of core to the build itself, is the curse setup. So we're using the Anathema ring, so we have 3 curses. There's a way you could build this using Whispers of Doom on your amulet, and then having a 2 curse setup. But this is a bit more damage. And when I talk about the gear in this build, there's some options for the ring depending on how you want to, what compromises you want to make or what your priorities are. In any case, we're using Castman Stun to cast Frostbite and Elemental Weakness and Punishment. Those seem to be the 3, certainly the first 2 are the best curses, and Punishment seems like the best 3rd curse that I have available. So Frostbite reduces cold resist. It's sort of essential to the build. We want to get to the least cold resistance possible, so that our falling crystals are doing as much damage as possible. Get another -30 on elemental weakness, and then on low life, monsters take increased damage. So that's the skills and the links for the build. None of these do a tremendous amount of damage for the build itself. So it's fairly flexible what main skill you use. Of course, you'd want to use a cold skill. We don't have any damage conversion, so it's going to have to be a pure cold skill. So there's probably a couple of options, but this seemed like the best bet. I couldn't really think that anything would work better than this. And it's again, it's not super strong, but it does work. So I'm pretty happy with the skill. It especially looks cool, and it's fun to play. All right, let's take a look at the passive tree for this build. Of course, we're starting here as a duelist. And the duelist area, we're going to ascend as Gladiator, and then we're using this new Ascendancy Breach Lord bloodline. Just take a look at the Ascendancy first, down here in Gladiator. We're taking a block node here, getting a bunch of block from our shield. We're getting Lucky Block here, which is giving us even more block. And we've taken the War of Attrition here, which is kind of an escalating damage type of a node. The longer you're in a fight, the more your damage will increase. Sounds great, because it's up to 100% more damage, except that most of our damage in these boss fights is coming from the Falling Crystals graft, and it's not scaled by our passive tree. So this doesn't affect the graft. It affects our other skills that are triggered with Cast with Stun. So it's doing something, but it's not contributing nearly as much as it seems like it would. There isn't really anything else to take. If you wanted to go maybe Retaliation, I guess that's another way you could build this. I'm not too familiar with Retaliation. I did try it out briefly, but it didn't really feel too good to me. So it seemed like the best bet for this character. And then in the Breach Lord here, we're taking otherworldly appendages. It's giving us some damage reduction, which is nice. And we're getting this nearby enemies take 100% increased damage from the graft skill. That's really crucial to the build itself, since our main damage is based around this Falling Crystals graft, so you really need to take that. There's anything else useful on this tree. You can get plus to cold skill gems and ignore monster resistances, which I don't think is actually good for us, because we're trying to lower mobs' resistances below 0. We don't want to ignore them, we want to reduce them as much as possible. So I think that last mod is actually counterproductive to us. And +2 to cold skill gems doesn't actually do that much for us, again, because our damage is coming from the graft and not from the cast when stunned skills too much. They do something, but it's limited. So it's kind of a judgment call on which way to go, but I'm pretty sure that this node's going to be the best option for us. Alright, so on the tree, we're taking all the jewel nodes that we can access because we're kind of jewel heavy in this build. We're going for basically all the life masteries that we can access. So we have all 6 of them. We're going for maximum resistances. We need Champion of the Cause to get our reservation efficiency. And that's just generic reservation efficiency. It's not specific to mana or life, which is nice. And then the mastery is the life reservation efficiency, which you need. We also have a rune graft of treachery, which increases our reservation efficiency as well. And we also have reservation efficiency on our shield. Taking some block here. Blood magic. This converts our mana to life, basically. So we're just doing everything off of life. Skills cost life. We're reserving against life, and that's basically how we get as much life as possible. Alright, we've got more life here. We've got more life here. Got our jewel socket, got an endurance charge down here as well. We're getting 6 endurance charges total. More life here. I'll talk about the timeless jewel elsewhere. Max res. Getting life, endurance charge, jewel socket, life again, block, spell block here, and also in this wheel here. Alright, picked up the jewel socket here, and we went with the agnostic. Removes all energy shield is mainly what we're concerned about here. We don't even have mana, so I don't think that second mod does anything. What's nice about this is our stun is based on our energy shield because we have the cast when stun ring. So not having any energy shield means that we're at the minimum baseline stun threshold, which is essentially nothing. Every hit stuns us. So if you have some gear that has some energy shield, even with Righteous Fire, we block so often that this node here, which has recover 50 energy shield when we block spell damage, will actually help you maintain consistently your energy shield. So that's reducing the rate at which we get stunned by a little bit. Didn't feel that impactful having a little bit of energy shield, but still, taking away is definitely an improvement, so you'd like to go this way. Alright, we have cluster jewel here. Thing we really wanted was chilling presence, because we always want to make sure that the enemies are chilled. Anything nearby is going to be chilled automatically. That means the falling crystals will have 100% uptime, essentially, as long as things aren't too far away from us. That's really kind of crucial to the build. Since we have so many cold skills, you might be able to get away without this, but you don't really want to. And it's just it's a low cost skill cost to get this, so you might as well do it. The deep chill just happened to be on this cluster jewel that I searched for. I didn't really give it much thought, but it's actually helpful having this increased effective cold ailments to make sure that we're getting up to our 30% chill effect. So this turned out to be about as good as cluster jewel as I could get. And then of course it adds the other standard jewel socket. Since we're here, we'll talk about a couple of the special jewels. We have the Foulborn Red Dream, which converts fire resist to maximum life. So the tree is tattooed with fire resist basically everywhere in reach of this particular jewel. And I also spend the extra 2 points to get this 15% elemental resist. So it's not showing it here, but it actually increases our life. I believe it's like 11%. So that is actually a really nice node. I mean, that's more maximum life than Constitution, which is pretty significant. We're using an Elegant Hubris Gaspero that gives us Supreme Ostentation, which means we don't have any attribute requirements, so we don't have to worry about strength, intelligence, dexterity at all. So we can tattoo every single attribute node on the tree if we wanted to. Super convenient to build this way. I just got lucky with the cheapest Elegant Hubris that was on the market and ended up with 1.30% increased effective chill. That was a pretty lucky accident. And then we also have 80% spell damage here. That's also pretty decent for the build. Now that 80% spell damage only affects the cast when stun based skills, which are not the most significant part of our damage probably. It's the graft, and this does not affect the graft. So it looks pretty good, but it's actually not quite as effective as it might seem, not for a standard build. Like it's saying it's giving us almost 10% to our average hit, but again, those are not the main damage that's being dealt by the build. So path building is a little bit misleading when you look at the estimates to your damage. Alright, let's see what else on the tree. So I'll talk about the gear separately, but we got a couple jewels here. One to maximize our cold resist and cap my chaos resist. We have Storm Shroud to give ourselves ailment immunity. We've got Valborn Witch's Bane, so this is going to give us some explode, which is nice. Definitely makes a difference, but it's again not as good as it might sound because it only counts your kills, and the falling crystals are not considered your kills. So when the falling crystals kill things, and that does a lot of that work for us, it's not going to cause an explosion unless you have Gravebind gloves, which make all kills in your area count as your kills. We'd be giving up the glove slot, which isn't really worth it in my opinion, so we miss out on some of the explode, but it's okay the way it is. Let's see what else. We've got Immutable Force, which is build enabling for cast when stunned. Talk about that more in the gear section. And the Blood Notch, again, cast when stunned, build enabling. So that's basically what our passive tree looks like here. I'm at level 98 at the moment. So it was nice to get a few extra points in these later levels because I was able to get the extra jewel slot, for example. Can take this life here. Was able to maximize all my resistances. And otherwise, it's a pretty standard cast when stun tree. Nothing particularly special about it. Except, for example, in the Timeless Jewel, this is not something that a standard cast when stun build would take. Alright, so that's the passive tree. Alright, let's talk about the gear for this build. So it's built around this Falling Crystals graft. Since this is a significant amount of damage that we're doing to bosses, we want this to be as good as it can possibly be. So highest level Falling Crystals, the increased damage, and that's basically what you're looking for. Got the Tenor Embrace, which gives us endurance charges on low life, which we always are. So we're always going to be at our maximum endurance charges. Great item here. using Nebulous, and you get 3 random synthesized mods on this. The one we want for this build is the increased frostbite curse effect. It's really the only thing that's going to increase the damage of falling crystals, because it's going to enhance our frostbite. Our curse will reduce resistances, and that's going to help our damage of all of our skills, but one of the few ways that we can increase the damage out of the falling crystals. This one costs 1 div. I'm sure you can get a better one. Other mods will help your other skills, so it's kind of up to you. You can get resist on here too if you need that. Pretty good item overall. Gloves I crafted myself. I bought the fractured base. I used essences to get the lightning resist. Kept rolling it until I got good life roll. I think I got 1 armor roll, and I exalt slammed the other one after I benchcraft the other resists. Eldritch implicits here. Unnerve is helpful, increases damage, but the cold exposure one is really not that helpful since we're using frost bomb already for minus 15% exposure. So there's probably a better implicit that you could use there, but I haven't done anything about that yet on my character. Using Mage Blood, got a little bit of resist, and of course it empowers your flasks, first 4 flasks to be full time. I'm using the 3 elemental flasks to cap my resist and bring up my maximum resist. I've got immunity to poison, to bleeding, and with the increases here, this is over 100% avoid shock. That makes us ailment immune along with our Storm Shroud jewel on the passive tree. 4th flask is flexible. You could use gold flask for additional rarity. You could use quicksilver for movement speed, which is probably what most people will want. If you're having problems with your resist, then a bismuth flask is a good way to go. And I've got increased effective curses, or reduced effective curses on here, so I'm immune from curses. Last flask, I'm using Bottled Faith. Increases damage, gives a little bit of regen. The crit strike I think you get on Consecrated Ground doesn't really do anything for us, and we're already using Zealotry, so anyways, this is just a little bit of extra damage essentially. Might be other flasks that you'd want to use in this slot, but this seems about the best one besides Progenesis, which will definitely be an improvement to your character overall, but it's very expensive. Alright, boots, movement speed, chaos resist, life, basically whatever it is that you need to fill up the resistances on your character. The implicits here, Eldritch implicits, life regeneration rates helpful to us, and then the chaos resist to cap chaos resist. You could probably get chaos resist in other ways depending on your particular gear, so you may want to use different implicits if you don't need that chaos resist there. Anathema gives us 3 curses. The other mods are of no use to us in this build. Power charges do nothing for us, and we're not self-casting the curses, so we don't even get them. So it's just a 1 mod item, which gives us 3 curses, and that's pretty good trade-off though. There's some ring options, which I'll talk about at the end here. Defiance of Destiny is a pretty standard item for cast with stunned. Missing unreserved life before being hit by an enemy. So I have a 19% roll here, and then with Catalyst we can bring it up to 22. You could spend more money and get up to 23% of missing unreserved life if you decide that's worth it. Other than that, we've got some resist in life, which are helpful. I've anointed Glacial Cage, which is over here. And since we're always chilling, if we're fighting a boss and the boss fight's taking a little while, it's going to be 10% increased damage. And this is one of the few ways I believe that we'll be able to increase our falling crystals damage. Since the way it reads, I would imagine any damage is going to work against it. So There are other nodes that you could anoint that are more damage with your cast when stun skills, but they're not the main thing we're trying to emphasize in this build. Alright, shield is a standard cast when stun shield. You need that 30% increased reservation efficiency. It's critical to the build. Since we're reserving against life, we want to fit in our reservations in the reserve life from petrified blood. And so we need to have this reservation efficiency, and then we have multiple places on the tree where we're getting it as well. I crafted this one myself, and I really don't know how to craft a better shield other than just pure luck. But it's a decent life roll, it's, acceptable armor. That lightning resist's a little sad to see on there, but it works for this build perfectly fine. You could definitely do better, especially if you're willing to spend money or you know how to craft. The helmet, I'm now using this nearby enemies have -9 to cold resist. This is something I switched to recently, and I'll explain why in a minute. Since it's a rare, you can have other good mods on here that you may need, like resist or block or life. I'm not actually relying on this block here, I've already got it on the tree, but if you needed it, well, I guess you could have gotten it here as well. Increase effective non-curse auras is helpful. This was just the cheapest one that was on trade when I decided to switch over to a helmet like this. And why did I switch to this helmet? Because this build was really designed with this helmet in mind, Eye of Malice. It's got some resist, evasion energy shields, not helpful to us. It's got inflict cold exposure on hit, which is we're already doing in other ways, so it's not really helpful for us in this helmet, but it's okay. And then nearby enemies have 50% increased fire and cold resist. So this is kind of a funny one, but if you get the enemy to negative resist levels through curses or other effects, exposure, etc., then this will actually further reduce the cold resistance. It'll increase it by 50% in the negative direction. If it's in the positive resist range, then it's actually going to increase it in the positive direction, and that's actually going to be detrimental to your build. So there's a threshold of resistance of the enemy by which this helmet is either help or hindrance. One example of where it's hindrance is in late waves of Simulacrum. Kosis can have a plus 79% resistance mod. With his base resist of 40%, he's over 100. We can't overcome that. We can't get it below 0. So this helmet was actually increasing cold resistance, and we'd end up in a stalemate in the battle that would literally never end. So I thought, while I was waiting for the battle to conclude, which it would never do, I left. I bought this helmet in trade. I put it on. I went back, and I was able to finish the fight. Not quickly, but it was definitely I allowed it to actually happen. So some options for this build. Instead of Anathema and the 3 curses, you could instead anoint Whispers of Doom on your amulet to get a second curse. Just use Frostbite and Elemental Weakness, and that would free up this ring slot, since that's the only thing this ring is doing for us, is giving us that third curse. There are 3 curses. A lot of cast when stun builds will use a Hateful Accuser because there are chieftains, and you can blow up the phantasms, you can spread the ignite. We're not really doing that. We do have some explode, but it's not very strong. Doesn't have ignite. It's not going to do that much for us. So you can use it, and it will help because the phantasms will be hitting you, which will be triggering your cast when stun. So it will increase your boss damage a little bit, and you get an occasional explode, which will also help just a little bit. But you have to spam it, because otherwise your other curses will keep overwriting it, and it's just really pretty annoying. I don't think many people would enjoy using this ring for this build. But it is an option, so I wanted to put it in here in case that's something you wanted to try. Probably a reasonable option though is Call of the Void. Got a bunch of cold resist, which is nice. All damage can chill, which isn't really helpful to us since we're already chilling other ways. All damage can chill you, but that's irrelevant because we're ailment immune. Enemies chilled by your hits can be shattered as though frozen. That's a wonderful addition to the enjoyability of the character. That shattering sound is really fantastic and enjoyable. So that mod is really a nice perk to this ring, but it's really the last line here. Enemies chilled by your hits lessen their damage dealt by half of chill effect. So we're often chilling by somewhere between 20 and 30%, and very often 30%. So that's reducing damage, incoming damage, by 10 to 15%. That's pretty decent. So this is a nice defensive option. It costs you 1 curse. It costs you the damage anointment on your amulet. But it seems like a pretty reasonable compromise to make if you want to try it. Alright, so that's the gear on the character. On the passive tree, we have some jewels here. One additional jewel to cap cold resist, maximum cold resist, and my chaos resist. Could definitely be a better jewel, but this is the one that I could find on trade. We have Storm Shroud. Since we're have over 100% avoid shock, this is ailment immunity right here in this jewel. Very nice. We've got Witch's Bane Valborn, which is going to give us some explode. It's not quite as good as it sounds because although everything's always cursed, our falling crystals actually do a lot of the kills. That does not count as your kills, and so it does not trigger the explode. But we've got lots of other skills going off, and so including one with Culling Strike. So we get a reasonable amount of explodes happening, but it's not quite as good as it might sound. Alright, we have a Valborn Red Dream down here. Converts fire resist and all res into maximum life. We've got some fire res naturally on the tree and all res over here. And then we're going to tattoo our strength nodes with fire resist to get some additional maximum life. So it's a pretty solid amount of maximum life for a jewel. Nice option here. These extra 2 points, that's just really optional, but 11% increased maximum life that's pretty significant. It's hard to pass up. For example, Constitution is probably one of the best life nodes on the tree. Although we do have 20 flat life, it's 10% increase. So this is quite a good node, including the all res that you still get. We have an immutable force. This is our stun and block recovery, so we don't get constantly stun locked every time we get hit. And you still get stun locked because I have a bad roll on this. You could get a better one, spend some more money. The roll goes up to 1,000, for example. But it doesn't really bother me. If I'm in a pack of mobs and I'm stun locked temporarily, I don't really mind because, well, I'm fighting the mobs. I have my falling crystals going off, the cast when stun skills going off, and so I don't really need to move. So I have no problem with this this kind of bad immutable force. You might feel differently. And then I've got a 60% blood notch. You can check eMiracle's Cast when Stun guide for the value that you will need in your build. Mine hits actually heal me. Not only hit me in, but they actually heal me. So you may not actually need 60%. You might be able to get away with a cheaper one. But I don't have any specific guidance on that because math and stuff like that. Alright, other than that, we have tattoos on every attribute because we're using Elegant Hubris with Caspero. It gives us supreme ostentation. We don't have to worry about strength, dexterity, or intelligence at all. They do nothing for us, but we also don't need them. So you can see all of my equipment here. I don't actually meet the stat requirements, but I don't need to. Just out of sheer luck, the cheapest Elegant Hubris I could buy on trade just happened to have 30% increased effective chill on these two 1-point nodes for me. So that is pretty nice, but I don't think many people are playing a build like this, so it's probably not a very expensive timeless jewel if you needed to go look for one. I've also got another 30% chill up here, 80% spell damage here, which sounds great, except remember that does not affect our Falling Crystals damage, only our cast when stunned skills, which is not the most important part of our damage. So that's why I anointed. Again, this node, Path of Building, will say it's less damage for your cast when stunned skills, but I believe this would increase the damage of Falling Crystals, which is more important. We got some rune graphs on here. Let's see if I can find them. Yeah, Rune Graph of Treachery, you need this for the remainder of the reservation efficiency that you need. Even though you have this, you have, even though you have Champion of the Cause, you've got this Mastery for reservation efficiency, you've got 30% on the shield. You need this Treachery to get the remaining reserve life back. We have a Fortress rune graft here somewhere. Remember where I put it. There we go. Rune graft of the Fortress. Reduces our attributes, which is not relevant to us, and increases our global defenses. So that's armor for us in this case. It could be evasion, energy shield, etc. for other builds, but those things are not relevant to us. We get rid of our energy shield with the agnostic here. And that just makes sure that we don't ever have energy shield, even though we have some on some of our items, or we could. And it's going to make sure we're at the minimum stun threshold so that we're triggering our cast when stunned setup as much as possible. This build blocks so much that even with Righteous Fire, we can still sustain energy shield with this node here. We're covering 50 energy shield when you block spell damage. So you would frequently have energy shield if you didn't take the agnostic. And it's not that impactful, but it's not nothing, so it's worth taking. Alright, so that's the gear for this particular build, and a couple of options. If you wanted to build it without the Mage Blood, you could use a Cloak of Flames, possibly. I haven't attempted to build this out, but that seems like a possible variation. And then if you used Call of the Void with that, you've got quite a bit of cold resist on here as well. That would go a long ways to help you cap your resist otherwise.